Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called on the international community to stop India from its reckless and militarist agenda. In a series of tweets, Khan said the Indian media has also revealed its government's dirty nexus that is pushing the region towards a conflict. He said Prime Minister Modi's government continues to turn India into a rogue state. Pakistan's army says security forces have killed 2 terrorists during an intelligence-based operation in South Waziristan. The military's media wing says another terrorist was injured during the operation and apprehended. ISPR says the terrorists were active members of TTP's Sajna group and were involved in attacks on security forces. In Sudan, clashes between rival ethnic groups in Darfur state have left 47 people dead. The violence follows the killing of more than 80 people in similar clashes during the last 2 days in Darfur. The United Kingdom has told Israel to halt its illegal settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. In a statement, the Foreign Office voiced concerns over the approval of 780 settler homes across the occupied Palestinian territories. It said the move will undermine the viability of a two-state solution to the conflict. Russia has slammed international response on opposition leader Alexei Navalny's arrest on his arrival in Moscow from Germany. The foreign ministry says states issuing pre-prepared comments should respect Russia's sovereignty and international law. Earlier, many European states and the US called on Russia for the immediate release of Navalny. The number of global coronavirus infections has crossed 95 million with over 2 million death toll. The US COVID-19 death tally is approaching 400,000 while its caseload is nearing 24 million. Pakistan has registered over 1,900 new cases and 46 fatalities overnight as the death toll approaches 11,000. And in cricket, England beat Sri Lanka by 7 wickets in the first test at the Galle International Stadium. The visitors chased down the 74-run target on the final day to take a 1-0 lead in the 2-match series. Joe Root was declared man of the match for his brilliant knock in the first innings. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called on the international community to stop India from its reckless and militarist agenda before it pushes the region into an irrepressible conflict. In a series of tweets, Khan said Indian media has also revealed its government's dirty nexus that is pushing the region towards a conflict. He said Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government continues to turn India into a rogue state. The Prime Minister said Indian-sponsored terrorism in Pakistan, its abuses in Kashmir, as well as the EU Disinfo Lab revelations have exposed India. Khan said he had already spoken at the UN General Assembly on how Modi's government used the Balakot crisis for an election win. He pledged to continue to expose Modi's fascist regime and India's belligerent designs against Pakistan. Pakistan security forces have killed 2 terrorists in northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The terrorists were killed during an intelligence-based operation in South Waziristan district of the province. In a statement, the military's media wing said another terrorist was wounded during intense fire and arrested. The ISPR said the terrorists were active members of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan Sajna group. It said they were IED experts, terrorist trainers, motivators, and were involved in attacks on Pakistan's security forces. Terrorist Osman was also involved in the attack on security forces on 14th of October 2020. Captain Umar Chima, 2 junior commissioned officers, and 3 soldiers were martyred in the attack, while 4 others were injured. The Pakistan Senate has passed a resolution against the illegal detention of Kashmiri leaders, including Yasin Malik and Assia Andarabi. The resolution strongly condemned India's inhumane treatment of the political detainees who are languishing in jails on false charges. It urged the UN Human Rights Council to press India to release the Kashmiri leaders. Pakistan has repeatedly raised concerns over the deteriorating health condition of the incarcerated Kashmiri leaders. And for more on this, we are joined by Mishal Hussain Malik. Ms. Malik, thank you for your time at Indus News. So first of all, Pakistan has voiced serious concerns over the maltreatment of your husband, Yasin Malik, in India's notorious Tihar jail. Is he facing a life threat there?
Yes, he is definitely. He's right now locked up in Tihar death cell in a 5 by 7 feet prison of solitary confinement. And he's being mentally and physically tortured. And this month, they have reopened a 31-year-old case against him, which is a TADA case. And they have fabricated charge sheet against him. They basically want to punish him, prosecute him, and the trial will begin on 29th of this month. So Senate of Pakistan, I'm grateful to them that they have all of them, the opposition parties, the government parties, all political parties of Pakistan have supported this resolution for the release of Muhammad Yasin Malik and for Assia Andarabi Sahiba and for all political prisoners. But main focus is definitely on Yasin's trial that's going to take place on 29th of this month, and which is very risky, and he is not being given any legal rights, basic rights of a prisoner. Though India is a signatory to them.
So, Ms. Malik, what role do you think the international community could play to help release political detainees facing false charges?
I think right now it's very, very important that the UN should play a very effective role, especially the Security Council, because after this abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, they have completely silenced all political voices of the people of occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and they have banned their movements, they banned all the parties, and they're locked up right now in various jails, and they're being tortured, they're being eliminated through these fabricated false cases that have been filed against them, which is basically complete political vendetta. And now I think it's very, very important for the world, especially for the Security Council, to take action against this, because India is completely violating Geneva Conventions on the rights of prisoners, UN resolutions, international covenants on treating people with punishments and torturing them. It's violating international law, especially those standard minimum procedures which are for prisoners, which are codified for them according to the UN. None are being given to us. So I think it's our demand to the UN, to the ICJ, to the ICC, that war crimes are being committed, ethnic cleansing is happening over there, and our voices are not being heard, we are being eliminated. So to safeguard the population of Jammu and Kashmir under occupation, which is being eliminated, UN needs to put serious defense, economic and legal sanctions upon India.
Ms. Malik, thank you for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. Now, moving on, the Afghan government says its troops have killed 25 Taliban fighters in a preemptive operation in southern Kandahar province. The Defense Ministry said 8 others were wounded in the raid. The ministry said the raids were carried out in the Zeraya and Arghandab districts of the province. It said 8 others were wounded in the raid, while a large amount of ammunition and weapons was also destroyed. A Taliban spokesperson said 2 soldiers were killed and as many wounded in the clashes. The Taliban say they have assured the United Nations of their full cooperation regarding the vaccination process in Afghanistan. A Taliban spokesperson said the chief of the political office in Qatar, Mullah Baradar Khund, met with the heads of the UN, WHO and UNICEF for Asia. He said the 2 sides discussed vaccines, treatment for coronavirus and other infectious diseases, including polio in Afghanistan. The spokesperson said the Taliban consider it is their responsibility to provide health services to the people of Afghanistan. In Sudan, clashes between rival ethnic groups in Darfur state have killed 47 people dead. The violence follows the killing of more than 80 people in similar clashes between ethnic groups in Darfur during the last 2 days. According to local officials, several houses were burnt down in the attack. The clashes occurred about 2 weeks after UN peacekeepers discontinued their patrols in the Darfur region, preparing for a full withdrawal. Violence in Sudan has surged since the ouster of President Omar al-Bashir following mass protests against his rule in April 2019. The United Kingdom has told Israel to halt its illegal settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. The statement from the Foreign Office comes as Tel Aviv approved nearly 800 new settlement units across the occupied Palestinian territories. Voicing serious concerns, London said that Israel's move will undermine the physical viability of the 2-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It said the settlement plans also threaten peace efforts. Israel has stepped up the construction during US President Donald Trump's term. According to a report, Israel advanced construction of over 12,000 settlement homes in 2020. The settlement activity is considered as illegal under international law. Israeli warplanes have launched multiple attacks in the southern Gaza Strip. Israel Defense Forces say the raids were carried in response to 2 rockets fired from north of the Gaza Strip. The IDF said its fighter jets struck military targets belonging to Hamas. Witnesses say the strikes completely destroyed certain buildings, including private property in Rafah city. They also said the Israeli military vehicles infiltrated the borders from east of the city and ravaged agricultural lands. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has denounced the American bombers patrolling the Middle East. He warned the US president that Tehran has not started a war in over 200 years, but it won't shy away from crushing aggressors. In his tweet, Zarif said the US should spend those $1 billion on its taxpayers' health instead of trying to intimidate Iran. Earlier, the US Central Command announced that a B-52 bomber aircraft had conducted a patrol in the Middle East. 2 US B-52s were also spotted in Israeli airspace heading towards the Persian Gulf. Iran's central bank has criticized the European Union's payment channel designed to allow European companies avoid US sanctions. In a tweet, the bank portrayed the instrument in support of the trade exchanges as useless, saying its operations are under the influence of sanctions. It said the UK, France and Germany do not have the courage to maintain their economic sovereignty. The bank said Iran will not divert its resources to Instex anymore, as the European states have no idea how to finance the channel. This came after Germany blamed Iran for the failure of the EU-initiated payment system. The Instex mechanism was set up by France, Germany and Britain in January 2019 to facilitate trade with Iran by avoiding the US sanctions. In Yemen, hundreds have gathered in front of the US Embassy in Sana'a to condemn the designation of Houthis as a terrorist organization. Houthi supporters hung banners on the embassy's fence and chanted slogans against the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, announced the move last week, which includes sanctions against Houthis and 3 of its leaders. It will come into effect on 19th of January, the Trump administration's last full day in office, but the UN has warned that blacklisting the Houthi rebels could push Yemen into a devastating famine. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Welcome back. Russia has slammed U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's top aide Jake Sullivan's claims over arresting the opposition leader Alexei Navalny. In a social media post, Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson said the officials criticizing Navalny's arrest should deal with the domestic problems first. Maria Zakharova said the officials and states issuing pre-prepared comments should respect Russia's sovereignty and international law. Earlier, many European states and the US called on Russia for the immediate release of Navalny. China says it will sanction US officials who engaged in nasty behavior over Taiwan. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying made the announcement in a daily press briefing. Hua said Washington's continued disregard for the One China policy triggered Beijing's response. This comes after Washington lifted curbs on exchanges between the US and Taiwanese officials. Earlier, China announced sanctions on US companies selling weapons to Taiwan. China considers Taiwan its province and has warned Washington of dangerous consequences for the provocation. The relations between the US and China are strained over a host of issues, including Taiwan, Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and the coronavirus pandemic. South Korean President Moon Jae-in says US President-elect Joe Biden should resume talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In a news conference, Moon said Biden's inauguration will provide a turning point to restart the stalled talks. He said Seoul will seek an early chance to promote Pyongyang as Biden's foreign policy priority. Moon added talks can pick up pace if they follow through on an agreement reached by Trump and Kim at Singapore's summit. The two leaders vowed to establish new relations and work towards denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, but their second summit and ensuing working-level talks fell apart.
The
inauguration of the Biden administration would provide a turning point to newly start the U.S.-North Korea dialogue, the South-North dialogue, to inherit the achievements that were made under the Trump administration.
Small groups of protesters, some of whom were armed, gathered at state houses across the U.S. Many state houses remained quiet amid a ramping up of security across the U.S. legislatures. Protests were held outside Capitol buildings in Texas, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio, and elsewhere, but no clashes were reported. Many cities prepared for violent protests over the weekend, erecting barriers and deploying thousands of National Guard troops. The deployments came amid FBI warnings of armed protests ahead of Wednesday's inauguration. Talking to the media, Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy said all Guard members were also being vetted due to fears of an insider threat. The global number of coronavirus infections has crossed 95 million with over 2 million deaths. The US COVID-19 death tally is approaching 400,000, while its caseload is nearing 24 million. More in this report.
The cases, hospitalizations, and deaths from the coronavirus have reached record highs as the world endures its darkest chapter of the pandemic yet. In the U.S., nearly 1 year since the first known coronavirus case was detected, the full extent of the nation's failure against the virus have come into clear view. The uncertainty over the availability of the vaccine's second doses keep building in the country, while the officials downplay the speculations as misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Brazil has approved Oxford's AstraZeneca and China's Sinovac vaccines amid doubts over the efficacy of the Russian Sputnik. Venezuela has sent a convoy of trucks carrying emergency oxygen supplies for Brazil's northern Amazon state, where second wave has hit hard.
The convoy going to Brazil in solidarity with the people of Amazonas is made up of 6 trucks with a total of 136,000 liters of oxygen, equivalent to 14,000 individual canisters. Early in the morning, we will be crossing La Linea, the border with Brazil, at the Santa Helena de Uairen customs to deliver the cargo to Brazilian health authorities and to continue towards Manaus, where it is estimated it may arrive 14 hours later.
Over in Europe, all UK travel corridors which allow arrivals from some countries to avoid having to quarantine have now closed till February 15. Dutch riot police used water cannons to try to disperse protesters against national lockdown, which attracted thousands of people to central Amsterdam. In Spain, nursing homes residents are among the first people to receive the second dose of the BioNTech Pfizer coronavirus vaccines. Meanwhile, cases continue to rise in China as well, where authorities say most of the cases are imported.
At present, there are mainly two regions where the epidemic situation is relatively serious. One is Hubei province, with the cities of Xizangtiang and Xintai as the epicenters. The number of corona cases is still increasing at the moment there. The other is Northeast China province, especially the province of Heilongjiang, where Xihua city is the epicenter. In addition, there are small clusters of cases in the other places which were caused by other traveling out of those two regions.
Australia's New South Wales has urged the residents to get tested after 6 new cases of community transmission were recorded in the state. India has reported 447 cases of adverse event following immunization and 3 hospitalizations a day after it kicked off its vaccination drive.
In Pakistan, 46 people have died due to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to over 10,997. Health officials reported 1,920 new infections overnight. Meanwhile, more than 34,000 active COVID-19 cases have been detected in the country. The health ministry says out of over 521,000 countrywide cases, more than 475,000 people have recovered. Meanwhile, the schools have reopened today for the students of grades 9 to 12 after almost 2 months of closure. In Bangladesh, a school building is burnt down after a fire broke out at the Rohingya camp in Cox's Bazar. This is the second major blaze at the Rohingya camp within a week. Last week, a major fire hit the Rohingya refugee camp of Nayapara. The UN Refugee Agency says the fire destroyed over 550 homes, 150 shops and a facility belonging to a non-profit organization. More than 1 million Rohingya refugees from Myanmar live in the mainland campus in the southern Bangladesh. UN investigators say they fled a military crackdown of 2017, which was executed with genocidal intent. Charges Myanmar denies. In Kuwait, Amir Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmad Al Sabah has accepted the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Sabah and his cabinet. This comes days before the Prime Minister was to be questioned in the Parliament over his choice of ministers and other issues. The state media said Sheikh Sabah's cabinet will continue in a caretaker capacity until the formation of a new government. The political confrontation comes at a time when the country is already facing economic crisis. In Tunisia, protests against economic woes have continued in central Tunis, where police arrested about 1,000 people. The protests and clashes with the police follow the 10th anniversary of a revolution that brought democracy. Anger is growing among Tunisians at chronic joblessness and poor state of services. On Sunday alone, police detained over 600 people after what it called a rioting across the country. Security forces said the rioting included looting and attacks on property, but demonstrators say they are not afraid and chanted, "The street belongs to the people." In Guatemala, security forces have used sticks and tear gas to block the U.S.-bound Honduran migrant caravan. This comes just days before the inauguration of a new U.S. administration. A large section of caravan clashed with security forces in the southeastern village of Guadalajara. The president's office said illegal mass movements of people will not be accepted. The office said Guatemala is working with neighboring nations to address this regional issue. In a statement, Honduran Foreign Ministry reiterated the resolve to continue to confront illegal migration. Authorities said nearly 1,400 people in the caravan had been returned to Honduras, including 192 children. Rescuers say 12 miners trapped underground after an explosion in Chinese gold mine a week ago are still alive. State media said the workers managed to send a note to rescuers 7 days after the accident in eastern Shandong province. The note said 12 people were alive in the middle section of the mine, while the fate of 10 others was still unclear. According to the state media, the rescuers made contact with some of the miners through a narrow shaft. Rescue teams were drilling several rescue shafts in the hope the workers can be evacuated. They sent food, medicine, paper and pencils into the hole after they felt pulling on the ropes they lowered into the mine. The explosion damaged the exit and the communication system of the mine, which was still under construction. In Indonesia, death toll from the strong earthquake and floods in the central parts of Indonesia has risen to 96. The quake has displaced nearly 70,000 people who were forced to flee home and take shelter. Disaster mitigation agency's spokesman said more than 250 others have been seriously injured after the 6.2 magnitude earthquake. Meanwhile, in South Kalimantan province, at least 15 people have died following weeks of torrential rain and flash floods. The world's fourth most populous country also suffered a plane crash on January 9 that killed 62 people. On top of that, a deadly landslide in Java has killed 29 people after the Merapi and Semeru volcanoes erupted. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Egypt has unveiled a significant new archaeological discovery of 54 wooden coffins at the Saqqara necropolis south of Cairo. Many of the coffins can be traced back 3,000 years to the New Kingdom period. More in this report.
The discovery of ancient wooden coffins in Egypt can rewrite the history of the New Kingdom period, which spans about 1539 to 1075 BC. According to archaeologist Zahi Hawass, the funerary temple of Queen Neat was also discovered near the pyramid of her husband, King Teti of Egypt's 6th dynasty, which dates back 4,200 years.
The major important discovery also, we found 22 shafts. Inside the shafts were coffins and mummies. In one shaft, 54 coffins. Inside the shafts, unique artifacts. We found a papyri about 5 meters long. We found major statuettes. We found games that the Egyptian played. We found also many unique artifacts, such as an axe belonging to a soldier. All this discovery will rewrite the history of Saqqara in the New Kingdom.
The discovery showed finely painted sarcophagi as well as a collection of colored wooden statues, ancient games, and masks.
We extract the coffins, and the most important thing in extracting coffins is to study them in order to add a new piece of information to Egypt's ancient history. We add linguistic information or something about how the coffins were made.
Officials are keen to show off newly discovered artifacts as they try to revive visitors after the tourism industry received a painful blow during the coronavirus pandemic.
In South Korea, Seoul's High Court has sentenced Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman J.Y. Lee to a 2.5-year jail term. Lee was found guilty of bribery, embezzlement, and concealment of criminal proceeds worth about $7.8 million. The 52-year-old was convicted of bribing an associate of former President Park Geun-hye and jailed for 5 years in 2017. But the sentence was reduced and suspended on appeal, and Lee was released after a year. Following the latest ruling, a lawyer for the 52-year-old termed the court's decision regrettable.
The nature of this case is the former president's abuse of power, violating corporate freedom and property rights. Given that nature, the court's decision is regrettable.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has ordered the early establishment of 18 markets along the border with Afghanistan and Iran. During a meeting in Islamabad, the Prime Minister said border markets will help provide jobs to locals and curb smuggling of goods. The 3 of 18 projects will start operation in February. This is part of Pakistan's measures to enhance trade ties with its neighbors. China's latest official figures have confirmed it was the only major economy to see growth in the pandemic hit year 2020. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows a fourth quarter growth of 6.5% from a year earlier. The GDP growth beat a forecast of 6.1%, following a 4.9% expansion in the third quarter. According to NBS data, the world's second largest economy grew by 2.3% in COVID-stricken 2020. Beijing's industrial output also rose at a faster than expected rate of 7.3% in December from a year ago. It expanded for the 9th straight month as the vast manufacturing sector continues its post-COVID recovery. December's retail sales also edged up 4.6% from a year earlier, missing forecast for 5.5% growth. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.